Welcome, everyone. We're very excited to have you all here with us today. Broadcasting live from Boise, Idaho, a little earlier than our usual start time, but that's because we've got some special guests on the East Coast as well as across the pond in England. And my name is Mike Bryant. Just going to give a brief introduction to our guests, and then we will get on with our conversation today. And first up, here in-house, Nicholas Chimonas. He's the Director of Research and Development at Page One Power. Happy to have you with us once again, Nicholas.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
And next up, we have Pete Campbell. He is the Managing Director of Kaizen Search, and Hello. He is also joining us from England.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Pete. Thank you again.
No problem.
And then straight out of Boston, we have Casie Gillette, Director of Online Marketing for KoMarketing. Hi, Casie.
Hi.
And lastly, Paul Madden, co-founder of Kerboo, formerly LinkRisk. He is also joining us from England. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Mike. My webcam crashes GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar, I'm afraid, so you're going to have to put up with not seeing my big, bold face.
Well, we are happy to hear your beautiful voice in the meantime.
I'll take that.
But this panel discussion today is going to be just a very casual conversation between our four guests and covering some relevant topics in the SEO industry, online marketing, and we're going to talk a little bit about links as well. So we'll get right into that, and that would be with our first suggested topic.
All right, well, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate you putting this together, doing the outreach, getting everyone organized for this today, giving me an early morning webinar for some, get a lot of coffee this morning for me. So let's jump right into it, identifying and leveraging linkable assets. It's a big problem in the link building industry. Oftentimes you have clients with misconceptions that you can build links directly to their product pages, right to their bottom of the funnel, bottom of the marketing funnel, converting pages that oftentimes people don't want to link to unless you're giving them money. So the way we go about this and to circumvent that issue is we'll build out content assets on our client's domain, get something that's really resourceful and helpful that people are interested in, that we can drive links towards and earn links towards a little easier, and then we'll send that link equity through the site with internal link architecture. But sometimes you're working with really big sites, and just even finding what assets already exist that are going to perform best for link building purposes can be an issue. So I'd like to direct this question to Casie Gillette. How do you go about finding linkable assets within a client's site, creating those for yourself, just how do you utilize that in a campaign?
Sure. So I mean, I think it's a good point, right? Like some clients have so much, some clients don't have anything, and where do you start? I like to kind of look at what are they already sharing and what's already doing well that way. So looking at tools like BuzzSumo and Open Site Explorer to see what is already driving links and what's already driving shares. Because sometimes that can point you in the right direction, right? And it really cuts out a little legwork of like scrolling through every asset on their site. But in the case where they don't necessarily have anything, I like to take a look at their competitors, right? So using those same tools to see what is already being linked to from their competitors. Because a lot of times, I know the whole, oh, we don't want to copy our competitors, like you shouldn't do everything they're doing. But if they've already done a lot of the legwork for you and figuring out what customers want, I think it's a really good place to start. So those are kind of my two places, to start thinking about what can we actually use to drive links to the site.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. And oftentimes, yeah, you do have something that has naturally earned some links, and it's been a well-performing piece of content. But even then, there's like opportunities left on the table. Like not every link you deserve necessarily builds itself. And so yeah, I think that's really important to like look at what's already performed well, look at what might continue to perform well. So Pete, Paul, do either of you guys want to jump in on this? Casie, I've read a lot of her link building stuff, and I really like her approach, so that's why I started with her. But I'd be interested in what you guys have to say too.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. So I guess for me, it's not too dissimilar. I guess I kind of try and, in terms of stuff that's already on the client site, I guess I'm always looking for kind of diamonds in the rough, if that makes sense. So stuff that either by putting that client's domain through BuzzSumo, or seeing with a tool like Ahrefs or Majestic what content has picked up maybe 1 or 2 links in the past, or having a look through Google Analytics in terms of stuff that's maybe had a high time on site but isn't really doing anything, seeing if basically, subjectively or scientifically, finding the pieces of content which perhaps look ugly or are not in depth enough that possibly could be expanded upon and made a more kind of rich resource. So I guess an example I would give you is there's a client that we work with. We didn't actually build this piece of content, but a colleague of mine did, where they had a totallymoney.com or a credit card comparison website, and they had a page that was like 500 words long on what the average interest rate is if you default on a payment, so you don't make the payment to your credit card. And that was quite a long, boring article, and what that was turned into was a tool which was guess what the percentage of interest rate is that you have to pay if you default, and you'd be surprised at how high it actually is. So they turned it into an interactive tool. So I guess it's a kind of good case in point where you can take maybe what most clients have, maybe a long, useful resource that's just very text heavy, and actually give it a nice design, think about subjectively how you can make it more in depth. And I guess my process for that is either using those tools to find those pieces and then making them. But then if they don't have them, in terms of actually producing new things, again, I go to the competitors. So first I'd use a tool called like BuzzSumo to research the 3 or 4 competitors that relate to my client to try and understand what typically topics work best for them and what types of content formats work best for them, and use that to kick off a kind of brainstorm. So using that information of knowing what works well, what fails, and then doing a brainstorm off the back of that to come up with an idea. And I guess after you get success, quite often it comes down to the execution of the content itself. So whether it's in-depth enough or design well enough. I think there's lots of good clients out there who have lots of good resources, but they don't actually think about the way in which a customer would want to read them, which is they don't want to read 500 words. They want it to be light, to the point, succinct, and well designed, really. And yeah, I guess that's my answer to the question.
I think that's really good stuff, Pete. Thanks for sharing. I mean, what it really made me think of a lot too is you got to respect backlinko. I mean, Brian Dean has come up with some awesome stuff.
Yeah.
And so but one strategy he's made that I sometimes take issue with the way it's executed is the skyscraper technique.
Yeah, that's what we do a lot.
Looking out. Sure, yeah, and so you're looking at competitors and you want to find content that, like you said, should be maybe designed completely differently for the actual digestibility of a user reading it. But I really like what you said about looking at your own site and doing that. And that's what I think people miss, is that they already have maybe some like a great white paper, some great research or something on their site that's just not put together right for the purposes of link, right? Like you have the data, you have the research, you have the content, but it does have to be designed a certain way, and that's part of the linkability of a linkable asset, like breaking up the way it's written on the page and the way the images are designed and laid out and all that stuff. So no, I really appreciate your answer, Pete. Thanks for sharing that.
It's all right.
Paul, do you want to tail us out on this and give us your knowledge?
Sure. I mean, from our perspective, what we've been doing recently is we've been looking at tools like BuzzSumo, and we're thinking about, we have an algorithm currently that allocates risk based on the links that you acquire in LinkRisk or Kerboo as it is now. And what we've been trying to do is we're trying to derive some algorithm to understand influence and reach, because we want to be able to get people down to the piece of content that actually has some influence and some impact, rather than just that has the most signals. And when we've been doing some of that work, we've been looking at some of the content that we analyze and realizing that quite a lot of that content, you've got to look at the amount of impact that it's had, the amount of shares that it's had, the amount of links that it's gained, and how many of those links and those shares are genuine, natural, and authoritative links, and how many of them have been, for want of a better word, manipulated or seeded into place. So we spent quite a lot of time recently trying to understand how to differentiate those those pieces of content that get genuine, actual, reliable, long-term coverage, and how many of them have got just the boilerplate style seeding type responses that we see all the time. And it's really difficult to do. But I think that's what's going to separate out really good content from not really good content. And we think we're on our way towards understanding a bit more of that. But I think you've got to look deeper than just the total number. You've got to look into the quality of what's in there as well.
Right. Can you, I mean, I know a lot of this is secret sauce, proprietary kind of stuff, but can you give us an idea of the kinds of maybe flags that your algorithm is trying to use to assess if a link is quality or not?
Do you mean in terms of the risk or in terms of what we're building for our BuzzSumo style product?
Oh, both actually. That's pretty curious to me as well, because I BuzzSumo for a lot of my work also. So that's both. Give me both.
The LinkRisk algorithm takes into account 150 or so different signals, and then it layers those on top of each other. A lot of the algorithm for the risk side of things is based around what we see in the data from previous. We're trying to derive intent. So on the risk side of things, we're trying to derive the intent by which that link was originally placed. So if that link was placed for manipulation of the Google algorithm, then that's what the algorithm is designed to try and detect. So it could look at a forum link, for example, and if the link is in the profile, then that would be riskier than if the link was in the post, if you will. So it's those sort of things that we're looking at. And then on the influencer side of things, we're currently looking at 3 different angles for that. So we're looking at the reach of the post, we're looking at what we call the velocity of the post, and we're looking at what we call the influence of the post. And we're trying to derive programmatically from each of those, layered on top of each other, a final single score that allows us to make sense out of the madness that is link data and share data from a post level. And that's hellishly difficult to do, but we feel like we're getting there.
I love it. I love it. I think this is data that is going to continue to be more and more important for us. All of us here, I mean, I don't know about our audience, but if you haven't already read the study that Moz and BuzzSumo put together, where they analyzed the correlation between share data and link data, and they essentially found no correlation at all. I think that we've all, like at least the past few years, as content marketing has really taken off, a lot of the SEO industry, link building, content marketing industry at large, all just sort of accepted with a grain of salt that, yeah, you know, you make great content, you push it out there, it gets shared a lot, and if it gets shared a lot, well, it's getting linked to. Like that's what happens, you know, and a lot of people I think just assumed that. And with studies like Moz and BuzzSumo coming out, like, you know, showing no, that's not the case at all. And with what you're putting together, I think we need more data on what's really happening with sharing and linking, and places that centralize that together where it's easy to see. And so I think I'm really excited for what you're putting together. That's good stuff.
We could also back that up by saying that the share data, the sharing and linking depends on the content type typically. So if the content is very shareable, it'll get shared. If the content is a resource that's valuable to link to or attribute in some way, it'll get links. Often it's very difficult to find pieces of content that do both.
Sure.
Yeah, I would just
I would
add on that. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, you know, that whole idea of like, you know, I think that's such a great point, something that can be attributed to. I mean, one of the things that we work with a lot of B2B companies, right? And so they put together reports and case studies and white papers and these things that actually are pretty valuable, especially the the research reports. But one of the challenges is, you know, they want to use those to generate leads, right? So a lot of times they're gated. So, you know, those are the types of things that we're really trying to push. Like, you know, those are the things that are going to drive links because it actually has some really solid data. So I think I just wanted to add, I thought that was a really great point that yes, those are the things that are going to drive links versus, you know, just shares.
Absolutely, yeah, I completely agree. Thanks for reaffirming that, Casie. Well, I think this is actually a good segue to move into our next discussion topic, which I believe coming up here is going to be link analysis. Yep, nailed it. So let's talk a little bit about, what kind of metrics and measurements we use to analyze links at an individual basis, but also at a domain-wide level. It's a little different, taking different approaches. So, Paul, I think actually you'd be the ideal candidate to open this up, maybe talk a little bit about how Kerboo does it as well.
Okay, so the way that we approach the analysis of links is, again, we try and derive intent, and we scored, as of a couple of weeks ago, 8.2 billion links so far. So we've got a decent-sized data set. And from that, what we try and do is we try and take as many signals as we can, and then we layer those signals on top of each other to try and derive how that link got its placement. So that can be looking at tactics from the past and trying to derive the reason why they were done. We look at systems that have been abused and therefore are problematic in terms of risk. We look at the relevancy, we look at the positioning, we look at the frequency of that link across the domain, we look at all sorts of things, and then we try and translate that into thinking about, actually, the thing that really matters is, how is this viewed by Google? Is this actually passing some value? If it's passing some value, we want it. If it's not passing some value, it's what's the point? So we have to then sort of take all of that we know about the quality or the intent of the link, and then we have to derive whether we think Google is actually passing some value through that link. And we all know that the vast majority of links probably don't pass any value or pass potentially some problem through there, and it's only the ones that really pass some value that we're interested in. So we've seen a lot of cases where, and this hurts me, that as a long-term link builder, placed millions of links in my time of all varying qualities, tend to be the lower quality, to be honest. That's how you end up with a product called LinkRisk, for Christ's sake. So because we placed a lot of those things in the past, it hurts me to see some of our clients not doing any placement or building of links at all, and actually removing links and finding their rankings improve as a result of taking things away, which I find difficult to rationalize in my brain. But we do a lot of work around deriving the intent, and I think everything boils down to intent. If you look at the link schemes page of Google Webmaster Tools Help, that's the page that really you're being judged by, and so therefore anything that could apply to being a problem as far as Google's view of link scheme goes is what we look to cut out of the equation.
Right. Thanks, Paul. I really appreciate that. I mean, I agree that it's the intent. That's really what it's about. I mean, when you have a site-wide link with keyword-rich anchor text and a footer, for whatever web design company or et cetera, that kind of stuff, it's those are the red flags they're looking for. I mean, when we build links, we think about that too. That we, almost none of the links that we end up building are really in our control. It's through an outreach email. It's through somebody on the other side of the web that's putting it up, and we don't ask them for certain anchor text. And that's how we avoid penalties. That we let people put up links as they would put them up. And so I think it's a lot about anchor text, obviously, and it's a lot about weight.
You also have to think about how Google views those. For example, because we see so much penalty activity, and we see re-inclusion request denials, and in those re-inclusion request denials, we see example links that Google consider to be outside of their terms, and you'll see a lot of forum stuff in there. I mean, forum posts are user-generated, genuine, useful, editorially given content, but Google seems to hate the forum link. They seem to be pretty bad at determining what is manipulative and what is not. So we end up advising customers to disavow and remove links that, in reality, there is no reason to get rid of them. So you really do have to think about the view by which Google in their ivory tower thinks about these things.
Yeah, I kind of wish Marie Haynes was here right now to share her feelings about what should or should not be disavowed. If If anybody here hasn't read Marie Haynes, highly recommend checking out her stuff. She's got a lot of really good knowledge. She specializes in disavow work and penalty cleanup, and so she's written quite a bit about what she's seen, what she thinks really is harmful and what isn't. So she'd have some opinions on that. But thank you, Paul. I think that's some great stuff you shared with us. Pete, do you want to take it from here about, and you can talk about how you analyze a good link too, if you don't want to just talk about how to identify that as well.
I mean, Paul got me kind of thinking there really a little bit, because it reminded me of one of the challenges that I face. I'm sure you do as well, Nicholas. That we have examples where we've produced content for a client, and it's been very successful editorially. So the client we were working with last year, where we did a campaign and it got mentioned in 5 or 6 national newspapers in the UK, very authoritative sites that, in addition to gaining the coverage, they obviously send referring traffic as well. But what we found is that they didn't really move the needle at all for the client's visibility, and it shocked me to a big degree, because this is in the first year of running our business. Obviously, it's only been around nearly 2 years, and I always was of the opinion that the higher authority links I gain, the rest will kind of take care of itself. Every one authority link will make up for the 20 paid links that may be on competitors' sites, for example. And I still find it very interesting today now that when you look at certain search results, I think it's, or even backlink analysis in general, you can't deny that the influence of a link that has keyword rich anchor text from a mid to high authority domain is still far more influential, even though the fact that that link is probably one that was there for manipulative purposes only, and it's not one that was editorially gained. So I always find that quite interesting. So that's by the by really. What I was originally going to say was how we use backlink analysis to kind of spot link opportunities. So quite often now what we do is, if we work with a client, we'll analyze 3 or 4 of their competitors' backlink profiles to try and identify links that they share that necessarily our clients don't have. So we're spotting, those 2 competitors share that link and we don't have it. So it's quite an old-fashioned tactic. I think it's just worth doing again and again, though, because we find it works quite well genuinely for us. And then the other element, in terms of setting the stage of knowing the kind of level of effort we need to look into, we quite often look at the gap in page linking route domains between us and our competitors when we start working with a client in a certain market, more than anything to manage expectations of how competitive it is. I don't think there's much for me to add in terms of what constitutes a bad link. It's fairly obvious. I think we went through those points just there. I use Kerboo to do that anyway, and then I do a manual analysis of it, so I'll leave Paul in his territory there. But yeah, there you go. That's my rant on that. I don't know if it answers any question in particular, but that's what's going through my brain.
That's some good stuff, and you're absolutely right. I find it to be true as well, that the keyword-rich anchor text link is still very powerful, still relevant. It's more so about, it's great if you don't have over-optimization already. Yeah. And then it's a problem. But if you already have a natural mix, if you're already getting like partial match and some exact match in there, that's important. Like, you can't do it all just on branded links and then hope that the on-page SEO pulls you through. So I appreciate. I think that's a good point to make.
I think that is
yours. Oh, sorry, Paul. Please share your thoughts.
Sorry, Casey. And I think that is very true, that the blatant stuff still works. It's about where you draw the line. We now have a line between not moving the needle and penguin. So we live in the middle of that, and we've got to balance that up or down depending on what we can do. But anchor text links still work. God bless anchor text links.
God bless anchor text. All right, Casie, tell me what you're thinking.
So, I mean, I kind of, I think, a lot of the things that have already been said, certainly apply, but the way that I kind of look at links in terms of, analyzing them and determining what is a good link is I kind of approach it in like 2 to 3 different ways. So I think there's a whole idea of, finding these like niche sites that maybe they aren't, the highest authority links, but maybe they're really relevant to your customers. So, we find a lot of, third-party opportunities for our clients to write on sites that their customers are reading, and they don't necessarily have the highest domain authority or the most links, whatever it is, but they're really relevant and they drive relevant traffic and they drive leads. And they drive customers, right? And I think that's the other thing that's really important. And there's a whole idea of a broad spectrum of links and having a ton of links, and that's obviously not necessarily true anymore. And we've seen a couple studies around that, and it depends. I get that it depends by industry, but for a lot of our clients, like we're just trying to get them these relevant links that make sense for them. But I also think there's that idea of the tiers, right? And that idea of getting them that general press that might not be as relevant, but is a really high authority. So, you have your news sites, you have your Forbes and your Inc. and Entrepreneur.com and those types of sites, right, that are just good to be on, that are good to have a link from, because that's going to help you overall. So I kind of look at it in those two ways of, niche and actually driving customers, and then how it's going to help you overall with like brand awareness and authority. I did want to touch on that idea of the forums, because I think that's such a good point in thinking about forums and having to be concerned about, is Google going to care? And the reason I say that is because a lot of our clients in the technology space, they get a ton of customers from sites like Quora and Spiceworks and some other tech forums that, like, they got to be there, right? So, like, we can't always be concerned about, well, if we put a link here, are we going to get in trouble? Like, we're trying to find forums that's not going to happen. But at the end of the day, a lot of times it just comes back to where are your customers, and sometimes you have to put that over the actual link itself.
Well, and it's valuable to diversify in that manner as well, so that if something does happen to your Google rankings, that's not your entire source of traffic. And I guess it's a balance at the end of the day, but I always value where the human user is over what Google might be flagging, is kind of my rule. I mean, I really hate it when we get clients that are like, we only want sites that are at DA 30 and above. Like, well, some of these DA 12, DA 15 sites, they're getting lots of comments and engagement and sharing, will probably be a DA 30 in a couple months or a few months anyways. Sometimes Moz accidentally crawls a bunch of Chinese spammy domains and inflates their index by 100 billion sites that shouldn't be inflating DA. So it's a metric that isn't perfect anyway. So just a little rant on DA and clients that have minimum 4 page rank, and it's like, okay, toolbar page rank hasn't updated in a year, so come on. All right, I want to share my one actionable tip here for link analysis, and it's about internal link building. Actually going through your site and finding which pages are relevant to put internal links to help other pages that maybe aren't getting enough equity from links and whatnot. It's a really good post I read from John Henry Shirk, 2013. It's on his blog. It's about scaling internal link building. I was working with a pretty big site this last week that wanted an internal link structure analysis, and this process that John pinned out was really, really awesome. Used a feature in Screaming Frog I hadn't used before, which is custom filters. So you can put in phrases, keyword phrases that will, it'll scan the source code of every page that Screaming Frog crawls for exact mentions of the phrases you give it. So you go to SEMrush or a ranking tool and you download all your keywords that are ranking on page 2 that have decent search volume. You take those exact phrases and put them in as custom filters in Screaming Frog. Once it's done crawling and you export, it shows you the number of occurrences of each phrase per page that it saw it on, right? So especially if a page has that occurrence several times, it's much more relevant to the other page that you want to increase the ranking for. Then you put internal links on those pages going to the pages ranking on page 2. That makes sense, but it was really cool. It worked out pretty good. And also, once you're done, then you can run all those through like URL Profiler and get linking and share metrics. You can find what the most powerful pages are to put internal links on. It was great. I really liked it. Well, I think that's all we have for link analysis for now. Let's move on to our final discussion topic, which will be the upcoming Penguin algorithm. I'd like to get, just some high-level kind of opinions, if anybody has them yet. Allegedly it's supposed to come out before the end of the year. That's what Gary told us. So who wants to open up on this one? Pete, I think this is your turn for number 1.
I guess, I mean, for me, it's almost a kind of sigh of relief. I'm kind of glad that this is becoming a real-time element because, you know, I'd be lying to say in the past year and a half there hasn't been customers that have came on board with us where we've essentially seen that they don't have a manual action and that their backlink profile is, you know, it's spammy, and we have to then go for analysis and remove those links, and we submitted this disavow file. And there has been certainly instances where, you know, it's like, well, we're not really going to see the needle move on this until we see a Penguin rollout. And then it becomes a situation of, well, when is that going to happen? And then you go, well, I don't know. It's a best guess based on, it's either probably going to be April or September based on the rollouts of the past 2-3 years. And that's the one, I'll either give you one of those 2 times. So there has been instances where, I'm sitting there with clients considering, well, maybe we rebrand, maybe we change the whole domain name because we know that the penalty won't pass through a new domain name. And it's ridiculous to have those conversations because the fact that we know that it would potentially save their business for the next 6 months. I mean, they shouldn't have, the things that happened to their domain and what they did as a business, they shouldn't have engaged with that. But there are certainly businesses who we work with where they have no real idea the damage the previous SEO agency or the previous company was doing to their business, and they just now want to resolve it. So for me, it's been a long time coming, I guess. It's more than anything else is what I'm saying. In terms, I think, of how it will change in patterns, I think doing more regular backlink analysis will become an even more prominent thing because now, I think quite typically at the moment, when I know these algorithms are coming up or going, when they go by, it's almost then like we book in, right, let's book in looking at our backlink quality profile to see if there's any action we've got to take. So I think that may be something that I have to build into our processes more often. And I guess the other thing is I would hope it would cause the actions of people who carry out negative SEO, which have had instances of clients into. I'd like to hope that would kind of start to die off a little bit because there's certainly a client I had last year in the gambling niche where because we were successful in our search tools, and it's the first time I've actually experienced negative SEO in the wild, someone had decided to go on Fiverr and buy a bunch of spammy links and start aggressively pointing to their site. And, and it impacted their visibility. It didn't result in a manual action. And it's kind of like, well, what do we do there? So I'm constantly disavowing all of this stuff. But I know in the back of my head that, well, am I actually going to see the positive benefit of this until the next Penguin algorithm? So I think it's just a common sense thing. And I don't know why it was never in real time. I think it's crazy that we had to go through this for the past 4 years now. So, yeah, there you go. So big thumbs up from me is I guess what I'm saying. That's it.
I am 100% agreement across the board. You've raised all the big points. I mean, It is such a battle with the clients to say, yes, hopefully what we did maybe will work in a very long time from now if you're still a business. But and that's really sad. Some of those conversations are heartbreaking, honestly. I mean, I've had clients that were laying off their staff because they hired some SEO that spammed them a bunch, and now they're suffering from Penguin. It's really sad, honestly. And so I hope to see it. Maybe I don't know if did any of you see the Google Blogspot release? Matt Cutts filled his Twitter with it about TensorFlow. It's Google's release of their machine learning technology as an open source platform.
Oh yeah,
pretty incredible. And so I guess this whole thing was like a big development process, and I kind of wondered in the back of my head, does this tie into Penguin? Like, is this part of why? Because Penguin is allegedly, I believe, machine learning algorithm, like any of Google's algorithms today. And maybe they talked about how for the longest time they had an older system. It was restricted in many ways, and that kind of ties into why they had to do the manual refreshes. And with TensorFlow, perhaps this is their breakthrough in machine learning that they can finally have the capacity to make Penguin real time. That's what I hope. Or they could be 2 completely separate things. I don't know. But so I really agree with you. Casie, Paul, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I will. I think, one of the things that I hate the idea of a disavow file. I hate the fact that we have to go in and say to Google, oh, take these links away. One of the things that I hope it leads to, it's not speculation, it's just me generally hoping, is that, with this rolling update, maybe they get a better sense of what are the links that just don't count them. Right? Like, just don't count those links. My friend Aaron Friedman wrote this article a while back on Search Engine Land, and it talked about the idea of, if you get a penalty, if let's say you get a Penguin penalty and you go and disavow those links, and then you're hit. And then there's this idea that, well, maybe in a year, if you clean everything up, your site will bounce back. But I don't necessarily think that's the case, because he brings up this really great point of the idea that those artificial links were inflating how your site performs. So in reality, you're probably not going to get back to where you were. So, I think with the ongoing, the ongoing updates, it gives people a better sense of where their site actually is, right? So you're not just hoping and doing all these things, and a year later, maybe it's going to be 3/4 of where it was or half of where it was. Now you have a faster opportunity to build that back up. So, I mean, those are my two things. I just really hate that, here are the links that just don't count. I'm like, I think, to your point of TensorFlow in this machine learning, it really should just be on Google to figure out what not to count versus how, to penalize someone for it.
That's always been my opinion as well, and I find it incredible that Google's out there saying, well, negative SEO could never happen, because we can understand the intent. We know the intent of any given link. Like, no way. Like, anybody could go out there and buy a bunch of links and make them purposefully look very manipulative. If you know about link building, if you know what you're doing, you can definitely, if you've seen a lot of penalized sites, if you've seen a lot of sites that have had manual penalties, manual actions, or Penguin devaluations, we know exactly what causes these things. To an extent, it's hard to pinpoint in any given circumstance, but I've seen the depths of the web. I've seen the underbelly of the dark spam web, and I know what causes these things to be triggered. And I don't know if any of you ever followed Irish Wonder. She's a black hat of like 10 years, Yeah, she knows her stuff, and she has some presentations. She goes and like speaks at conferences and stuff, and she talks about negative SEO and how many times she's done it successfully, and like, here's all the things you look at. These are the kinds of flags. Like negative SEO is real, so it's upsetting to me. I hope it becomes real time. I hope that quells the negative SEO industry, all that. So, Paul, do you want to share your final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to Irish Wonder, for complete transparency, Irish Wonder and I were both administrators on a forum called Syndicate back in the day, which was a black hat forum for spammers. So that I've known Julia.
She still has a subdomain blog on that site. She still publishes on that from time to time. irishwonder.syndicate.com.
Yeah, and her avatar is a drawing I did of her when I was drunk once. So that's how far back we go.
Very happy to have Paul. I had no idea. That's great.
Well, I also did the original Yoast avatar, so I released that on the world, unfortunately.
Very cool.
As far as the upcoming Penguin update, or Great Sales Day, as we call it internally here at Kerboo, we are very much looking forward to it. I am very keen on them getting it baked into the algorithm, because I would reinforce everybody else's points to say that it's unfair that people, some people have asked us, would I rather have a manual action, or would I rather be under the influence of Penguin? I'd rather have a manual action, please, because I can sort that out and I can move on and I can get on with things. And to Casey's point about the idea that customers and clients need to realize that when you go through that cleanup process, you're actually getting rid of a large proportion of your link equity that was inflating you in the first place. We have a client only the other day who said to me, now the penalty's gone, will we get back to where we were? Well, we've just removed 85% of your link profile, so no, you've got some work to do yet. You've got to do all the good work and all the hard work from here on in. So the baking in of the upcoming Penguin algorithm, I think, is long overdue. It will allow us to be able to say to clients with confidence that if you do the right things, then the action that you take now will pay you back quicker than 2 years' time or a year's time or something else that is completely unfair and is completely difficult for you to explain to them or them to understand. I also think that if people are going to start the process of cleaning up in terms of Penguin, they need to get it done ASAP, because it's not until Google caches all of the stuff that you've done that it becomes real in terms of the way that Google views it. So disavowing stuff and having that recached, cleaning stuff up and getting it removed and having it recached, all that needs to happen well before the algo gets run. Otherwise, you're missing your chance. Anybody trying to do it in the last 2 weeks before they do the update, it's not going to work.
Yep, absolutely. That's a nice trick to just check the cache of the page that the link's on. You can see if it's been crawled since you disavowed it. Yeah. Well, I think that's, pretty much what we had for discussion topics. We've got about 20 minutes left. If you're all free to hang around, I think maybe we've got some audience questions. Mike, if you have some lined up that maybe we could roundtable.
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions. I'm going to go back to the beginning. And this is just basic stuff. What are a few tips to keep in mind when creating linkable content? And at Page One Power, we've done webinars on this specifically, but maybe your number one best tip, and have everybody kind of go through and share an answer on that.
Best tip for creating linkable content? That's the question, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll start it off. Do your research. Go out and see, actually look and see if your topic really is link-worthy. See if people have written about it before. Find if there's other pieces of content that have performed well within that topic realm that you're trying to create within. Use BuzzSumo. Look at the share data. Look at the link data. That's number one thing. People go out with a scattergun and just spray and pray blind content to the web. That doesn't work. So do your research. That's my main tip. Casie, you want to go along the line?
I mean, very similar. I would just say, look at, it has to be about your audience. It has to be about the people who you actually want to share your content, who's actually invested. Go and look and see what they're already sharing, right? Go and look and see what they're already linking to. Go and see what they're already talking about. Fill a need, right? Fill a need for them. I love the idea of just going out and finding what your audience is asking. What are the questions they're asking out there on forums and their blog posts, whatever it is, and answering those questions for them. But yeah, just taking a look at what they're already interested in, what type of content they're already sharing and linking to, and then just figuring out what is that need that they have, what are the questions that they have that you can actually answer.
Oh yeah, I like Quora a lot for that too. Quora has some great questions, and there's incredible content on Quora too that is a good springboard spot for making your own content that's answering similar questions. So I like that too. Pete, what's your number one tip for linkable content?
I think for me, let's pretend I've got an amazing idea. I've done all my pre-research, so best idea in the world. Thanks for doing that. It's design. I think. The design of everything we do, half the links that we get is due to the execution of that design, in the sense that you've got to bear in mind that people don't like to read typically on the web. So if this is why infographic formats are so successful, because they're data driven. You can execute in different visual ways, and if you do have a long form in-depth piece of content, you've got to kind of be needs to be almost like you're kind of again and again trying to capture the user's attention, either by using large headings and large subheadings, breaking up paragraphs into smaller paragraphs or into bullet points. It's almost like you have to have a color wheel on a long form piece of content. That it's red, then it's blue, then it's green, then it's yellow, just to try and get people to actually pay attention to what you're reading. I think most people who actually read long form content actually don't read it. I think they scroll to the bottom, think it looks cool, and then they bookmark it, and then they link to it anyway because they think, oh yeah, this is good. Because I do that all the time when someone goes, this is a good piece of content. I'm like, great, did you read it? No, but eventually I do. So I recently got engaged, and one of the examples I kept touting around as a good piece of content was a piece by Canvas Weddings, which is the ultimate wedding planning guide, which is like 10,000 words long, has this kind of color change and checklists on different pieces, and I touted it around for about a month, and it wasn't until a week after I got engaged I actually sat down and I read it. But I don't know what it has to do with design, but I think it just shows that I think the psychology of design, I think you've got to be well trained in when it comes to creating a linkable asset. Even if it is just a customer resource or guide, I think you have to be very careful as to how you lay out that content. no one's going to link to just 600 words of text. You have to really work hard to break that up to make people read it. So everything you make has to almost be like a beautiful PowerPoint presentation. I think people understand that when I say it. So there you go.
I agree. That is one of the #1 most important things for content on the web that is so often forgot about. That's a really good tip. Thanks, Steve. Paul, what's your #1 tip?
I would say start with the end in mind. So at the point that you're going to produce some content, think about why people would share it, and then think about how they would share it. And if they're going to share it via social, aim the content towards them sharing it via social. If they're going to share it via attribution via link, then create the content for that purpose. Creating great content and then going out and trying to find an audience for it is a lot harder than finding the audience and then creating the content to match.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, that people do share and link for different reasons. A lot of times top of the funnel content marketing is for shares and links, but I think there's more segmentation between different types of top of the funnel content, that some is more likely to attract shares, some is more likely to attract links. Differentiators like shorter bite-sized content probably going to be shared. Long form, more likely to be linked if it's more evergreen and resourceful, that kind of stuff. And it's a good point too that people share because that Pete wrote that people share oftentimes as a bookmark, like, oh, I'm retweeting this or liking this because I'm going to go back and read it later. People link really only if they have read it, if they've really digested the content. People don't just link to things. Like linking doesn't just happen very often. It's only top media sites. I could rant about that for a while. Mike, what's our next question?
Well, Jordan, he has a client that is in the space where the CPC can be as high as $400 per click, and so the client is getting killed by negative SEO. Any advice or tips in that area?
Okay, who wants to open up on this one? That's above my head.
Let's think about the question again.
So,
happy to have a go if you want.
So their cost per click, so their AdWords, they're getting killed in AdWords because of negative SEO. I'm not sure I even entirely understand the question. Hopefully somebody here does.
I mean, I think the point is right. They're not doing well. They're not doing well in search, so they're having to pay for AdWords, right? And it's extremely high cost per click. I mean, the thing I would say is, I would, just work on, I guess with like the disavow stuff, figuring out what you can. But the other piece is, finding out what are some other channels that your customers are on. Where can you go that's not necessarily search? I mean, while you're building up your site, like, is there social? Are there forums? Are there, is there other sites, third-party sites, things that you can be doing elsewhere as you're building your site and trying to get rid of that negative SEO? I don't know how you can necessarily just do it quickly, though, unfortunately.
Penguin is coming, hopefully. So get your disavow work done now. I mean, that's #1 priority. Get that stuff taken care of, but invest in other marketing channels. That's good advice. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? I know that's a tough question. There's not a lot. That's the bad position a lot of us have been put in over the past year, where Penguin hasn't refreshed for so long. It's like, what do you tell people like that? Make a new website, just rebrand. Like, it's hard.
I think from my perspective, sorting out negative, job one is find out if it is negative SEO, because 90% of the cases where people suggest it's negative SEO, it turns out it's not negative SEO. We had a fantastic example of that the other week that I can't talk about, but was very amusing. So make sure that it's not, that it is actually negative SEO. If it is actually negative SEO, not to pitch our services, but we have something called daily imports, where we pull in all the new links that arrive on a daily basis, and then you throw them into your disavow file as and when they arrive. That works pretty well to sort that problem out once you've identified it, but you've got to make sure that it is negative SEO before you start, and not some other reason in your link profile or structural reason in your site, or some other reason why your visibility is actually suppressed in some way. It's rarely negative SEO in my experience.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of talking there was that, yeah, to question the actual SEO strategy itself more than anything else, excluding the backlinks. Do you really honestly ask yourself, when you compare your business and your website and your brand compared to people who are ranking effectively in terms of SEO, you know, are you really good enough, or are you better than them? You know, when it comes to every SEO element, titles, meta descriptions, copy edits, the kind of content you're producing technically, I think it's worth doing a full technical audit and on-site audit from start to finish to really judge, is it a negative SEO? Because it sounds like maybe, you know, in theory, people don't spend money on AdWords and high CPCs, and they go, right, that's too high, I'm going to do more in SEO. But yeah, it's not just going to be negative SEO that's holding you back. The example I had, a real negative SEO over to a client's friend of mine, yeah, it impacted their visibility, but you know, the reason why they were strong in the first place is because of all the sort of stuff we were doing. So we weren't, you know, the knock was small, not great, you know.
Yeah, I hate fighting against an unseen, unknown algorithm without any indication that you're really doing anything to help the situation, or that all your efforts are just completely being hindered by something that you can't fix. So I'm jaded because we haven't seen Penguin refresh in so long. For the longest time now, I've been of the opinion, if I'm fighting a brick wall like that, paying $400 a click, I'd rather take that money and invest it in a new site. Start fresh, start clean, just completely get out of that situation. Maybe even keep the site live and keep trying to clean it and tinker with it if there is some potential there still that maybe it did really do well back in the day or whatever. But I'd rather even just start a new site, start with completely unique content, reboot with a new brand name, do everything. If somehow I clean up the original site, I'll 301 them together. I'll acquire my new site and put it together in 301 redirect and then go from there. But I don't like the idea of spending $400 a click, waiting a year for Penguin to refresh. Hopefully we see it live in real time and my philosophy can change, but that's just how it's been for the past year or two. So let's move on to another question, Mike. We still have about 7 minutes here. If that's okay with all our panelists, if we got, you know, go up to the top of the hour and then we'll call it.
So Andrew submitted this question. He said, Jason Demers recently wrote an article on Forbes that stated manual link building will be obsolete in 2016. Jason went back and changed it to bulk link building. We're just wondering what the panel's opinions were regarding the future of manual link building.
My opinion is that you should go to ericward.com and read his rebuttal response, and that will give you the entire rundown of, yeah, that's all you need to do.
I think he actually just put something. I think he actually just put something on Search Engine Land today. Oh, sorry, my phone ringing. I think it's today, yeah, and it was that same thing, right? That's around. It's called exactly why manual link building will never be obsolete. Yeah, I would read those two things.
But I have to guess that's why Jason updated his title, I would assume. You know, and that's Jason's style. Like, let's be honest. Like, he writes on Forbes. He writes that stuff on Forbes because it's very click-worthy. That's the audience of Forbes. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's going to draw those people. I don't fault him for that. It does make me a little frustrated, though. Like, we're constantly, like, we're always battling the sordid history of spam link building came out of, that it was just so spammy for so long. But there's people like Eric Ward that have been doing it for 20 years, which is incredible when you consider the history of the internet, they've been doing it the right way the whole time. And they called it link building. I think it's too bad that spam gets called link building. That's spam building. Like, that is spam. That's not link building. And so people have rebranded it as link earning and content marketing, whatever, but going out and being deliberate about outreaching and building relationships, you should just read Eric Ward's piece, honestly. Like, it's going to sum it up better than I can, but that's my opinion. So, any other panelists want to weigh in on that one, or should we jump to the next question? I feel like we've got an agreement on that. But okay, all right, Mike. Next question. Let's move on. I'm going to get ranty.
So Geraldine, she asked, what are the best tools for checking site backlinks, both free and paid tools?
Well, Majestic SEO is, of course, the biggest index out there. Ahrefs comes close. I really like how they differentiate between fresh or live index stuff that's been seen in the past 3 months. It'll recrawl the past 3 months versus historic, everything that's ever been there. Majestic has the largest historic database, so I really like it for link analysis and cleanup, that kind of stuff. Of course, you have Moz, who they have a smaller index, but they crawl in different ways, and they look at different factors. They say they're more metric-based, and so that helps them get, they say the best links, even though it's a smaller index, so or the most qualified links. You have SimilarWeb, which was an interesting, WebMeUp actually, which is like another free backlink tool that came out. Has anyone on this panel used WebMeUp before? It sort of came on the scene last year. They had a really big index that compared with Ahrefs in size, like pretty similar. Then they started fleshing out an SEO tool suite of like keyword research and whatever else you need. Then they closed down shop and like subsidized, and now they're just a backlink tool again. But they still have a really big index. And I find in comparing between Majestic and Open Site Explorer, those are my two go-to tools. When I compare with like Webmaster Tools, Link Data, that's of course the best free one. If you're going to use Google Search Console, get your link data there for free. But when I compare it to WebMeUp, I still see some stuff that's missed. So I think like the best thing I could say is that every index is different. They're all third-party tools. None of them are Google. Even Google's data from Google Search Console is only a sampling of the full data they have. The best thing you can do is go out and just get as many sources as you can. That's my answer. Anyone else want to weigh in on backlink tools?
I mean,
We did some.
sorry.
Sorry.
No, I just say Google. I mean, Google Webmaster Tools for free backlink profile, and we have a license for Ahrefs or Majestic. That's it for me. That's gospel. So. Like,
Yeah. I feel like if you get one big one, right? You always use your Google Search Console data. Like just use it. It's free, and then subscribe to one of the big indexes. That's kind of how I see it. So
as far as backlink data goes, we did some analysis of backlink data in terms of the completeness of each of the indexes and their helpfulness in doing the job of analyzing a backlink profile. And we put it on a scale of 100. So if we say that Search Console is 100, we ranked Majestic at about 75, Ahrefs at about 70, Moz was down at about 20, WebMeUp was about 15 in that. So they're obviously on a sample case. If we repeated that now, it may be different. You can get a lot of your link data for free. It's a matter of making sense of that link data because you've got to combine it all together into one deduped list to be able to make sense of it. So you can use tools like Kerboo. Kerboo does that. It would be remiss of me not to mention such things. Also, URL Profiler does a great job at that if you want to use them. Pat would hit me if I didn't say that as well. But other than that, you've got to spend a lot of time analyzing and deduping that data to get down to a list. Link analysis.
I love URL Profiler. URL Profiler is my gospel. Once I do have all the link data from all the different sources, then it goes through URL Profiler so I can have the same data on even because it's all coming from different indexes with different metrics. I can compile it all in one place with URL Profiler, and I like that a lot. Well, I really appreciate everybody, Casie, P, Paul, for joining me today and participating in this discussion. We're at the top of the hour now, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. But thank you very much. If anybody has specific questions for any specific members of our panel today, go ahead and send them through GoToWebinar. We'll have all that data. We'll make sure the questions get routed to the right people and you get a response. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Thanks again. So have a great day.
thank you.
Thanks.
Good old.
Bye, everyone.